Hello. So in this video, I am going to teach you how to use the scale for when you have a fat loss or a body composition goal without losing your, we'll say, mind. Uh, so the reason why I'm making this video is because I work with a lot of people who have fat loss or body composition goals. They want to, let's say, gain a little muscle, lose a little bit of fat, and they get so discouraged and frustrated by the scale to the point that they want to give up even when they are making progress. And this is because they don't understand how to interpret the scale trends. They're still a little bit too attached to that number, and it's not reflecting what they think it is. So in this video, I am going to explain to you what the data means and how to interpret it. And based off of that, you can decide whether or not you want to use the scale. But that is what we are going to cover in this video. So I want to start here. You do not have to weigh yourself. Even if you have a fat loss or a body composition goal, the scale is entirely optional. Really, the scale is just data, and it is showing your body weight, but it's not showing how much fat mass versus muscle mass or bone mass you have. And this means that a lot of the fluctuations that we see that we get so attached to are really just water gains, and water fluctuations are normal in the human body. So if you find that using the scale is really messing with your ability to just do basic healthy habits or stay on track or work towards your goals, maybe the scale is not a good option for you. That is okay. But with that, let's talk about some of the factors that are going to affect the scale that do not reflect body composition. And what I mean by that is these factors might cause the scale to bump up or down a few pounds in across a day or a week, but they're not reflecting whether or not you've lost fat or gained muscle or lost muscle or any of those things. They really are just reflecting how much water is in your system. And again, water fluctuations are normal. So the first one is sodium intake. So let's say you had a big salty meal the night before you wake up. The scale might be up a few pounds for a day or a few days. And that is just because of sodium. Hydration. If you're a little dehydrated, sometimes that may cause you to retain water. If you're really dehydrated, the scale might actually look lower than normal. Stress is a big one. So you might have noticed that when you are stressed, the scale goes up. That is not necessarily because you gained fat. It could just be that there's some hormones coursing through your body that are causing a little bit more water retention. Have you had a bowel movement recently? That will absolutely affect the scale. Sleep. If you had kind of garbage sleep, again, that's stressful on your system. The scale might reflect it by going up a little bit. The volume of food eaten. If you're eating really high volume foods, like a lot of like vegetables and dense things, then the scale might actually be a little bit higher. Versus if you're eating more lower volume foods. And this also goes into sort of the next point of if you're in a deficit versus maintenance. In a deficit, we eat a little bit less food than at maintenance. And this is one of the reasons why even if your fat mass and the amount of muscle mass you have stays the same and going into a deficit versus the start of maintenance, your maintenance weight will always be a little bit higher than your deficit weight. I'll explain that more in a future slide, but that's one of a few reasons why. Medication. Again, medication can cause us to retain water. Where you are in your menstrual cycle, if you are lifting weights, they call it swole for a reason. So a lot of the time, again, this is just water games when we're lifting heavy weights or we've done intense exercise. The next day or two, the scale might be up a little bit. If you take a week and a half off, the scale will go down. And even if your body composition, then again, the amount of fat mass and muscle mass and bone mass and all those things stayed the same, we just retain a little bit less water when we are untrained or not doing more intense exercise like strength training. And supplements. So like, for example, sometimes people start creatine and they totally freak out because the scale goes up a couple pounds. Again, that is just water retention. You can think of it like muscle water because your muscles are literally holding a little bit more water within them. But physically, you probably visually look about the same, even if mentally it feels very different. That's more of a body image issue, though, than a actual reflection of reality, if you will. All right, so these are all the reasons why, and I'll give you a graph example in a moment of why you can be losing fat and or gaining muscle And the scale will make it look like you haven't lost weight or like everything is exactly the same, or sometimes even going up a little bit, depending on when and how you are interpreting the data. And this is why the scale is not something that you should be overly attached to. You should be looking more at your general behaviors and other things like, say, how clothes fit, how you feel, that kind of stuff. Though, again, how you choose to track these things is entirely up to you and very personal. All right. So if you are going to choose to use the scale, it's not going to give you good information day to day. It's just not. The best information it's going to give you is a trend of what your body weight is doing over time. That means that if we're looking at data points from over the course of a month, we're looking at like what was your average weight the first week versus the second week versus the third week versus the fourth week, and what did that trend do? And then also the validity of this data is going to depend on how many data points you have. So this is why if you just weigh yourself once a month, you could have lost 2 pounds of fat over the course of that month. But if you caught yourself on a low day at the start of the month and a high day at the end of the month, it might look like you gained a pound when really you're actually losing weight. uh, and even once a week, it might not tell you much for this reason. If you are doing more body recomp or if you are doing more of a just really moderate, slow, sustainable deficit. So here is an example of a scale trend. And this trend is about a half a pound a week. And if you're like, wow, that's really slow. Yep, because this is actually a lot more realistic than a lot of the charts that we see. So what I want you to see here is, let's say it started on, let's say, a low day, 169, right? I think I had another data point here, but anyway, this is what the graph gave me. This person, this is all made up, by the way, weighs 169 pounds. Let's say they catch themselves on this day, and then about a week later, even though notice here they're losing about a half a pound a week. Let's say they weigh themselves once a week. So they weigh themselves on this day, 169. About 7 days later, they weigh 172. They're in a deficit. They just caught themselves on a high day because, like, let's say they just had a really salty meal and a really stressful day at work and they didn't sleep. And then you'll notice that if they caught the next day, they actually have a new low. That's not uncommon to see. And then things kind of go down for a while. Again, the trend is going down, but then let's say they end up eating at maintenance for a couple days. Their weight looks like it's high again. But again, that's not actually reflective of whether or not they're losing fat. This is all just water because these fluctuations are, I want you to notice it looks big on the graph. It's like 3 pounds, right? 4 pounds. Just 3. Yeah. Math is hard, apparently. And then they go down, and then it continues to trend down because, like, let's say they're back in their deficit. They had several low days. But then, again, they have a slightly higher day. So let's say that they catch themselves here. Again, it can look like nothing happened from here all the way to like something over here. Do you see this? And really, this trend is going down. But if you catch yourself on just the high days, you're not going to know that because this is what would happen if you weighed yourself every single day. You would have all of these data points to look at. And we know the line is going down, but without being able to see every single data point, if you catch yourself on just the high days or you start on a low day and you catch yourself on a high day, this is why you could have lost at the end of the month like 2 pounds and you wouldn't even know it. You'll be like, wow, my weight is exactly the same. What gives? I give up. But actually, you're making progress. So again, you want to look more at behaviors and long-term trends. You don't want to be overly concerned with the scale. And also, if you're just weighing yourself haphazardly, this is why that data is just not super great data. Now, again, I'm not saying you have to weigh yourself every single day. I'm just saying that your data isn't very good if you're using it as like a weekly or even a monthly weigh-in. If you're doing kind of a really slow, sustained change where either it's just really gradual fat loss, or again, it's body recomposition where you're sort of gaining a little bit of muscle and losing a little bit of fat, which will change how your body looks, but the scale might look exactly the same or have this really, really slow trend in that case as well. So I want to make another note here. I want to just sort of spell this out. So another thing that happens is people are doing their fat loss thing. They're in a deficit for several weeks for the most part. And then they take a break and they go to eat at maintenance. And within a couple days, their weight jumps up. And again, there's a little bit of panic because we've been conditioned to be so worried about the scale. So, what I want you to start to normalize in your own brain is when you start eating at maintenance, you should expect your weight to increase a couple pounds and then level up or level out. So basically, within a few days, expect it to jump by 2 pounds or so on average. And then it should just sort of do the thing where it just sort of looks mostly the same all the time. And then the same way, when you go into a deficit, depending on how your body responds, some people's bodies get a little stressed and their weight actually jumps up a little bit and then kind of drops a couple pounds and then levels out on the slow trend down. And other people, it drops down and then it levels out. So again, it's not like in that first week you magically gained 2 pounds of fat because you ate at maintenance, or you magically lost 2 or 3 pounds of fat because you were in a deficit. That is all just water. So when we are in a deficit, we have fewer glycogen stores or carbohydrate stores as energy in our muscles. And so we're basically just a little bit depleted and a little bit dehydrated. And that is why you see that initial drop in weight. It's just water. It doesn't mean anything. You really, again, are looking at long-term trends. So you should expect an initial little drop when you go into a deficit for most people, and you should expect a little bit of a bump and then a leveling out when you start to eat at maintenance. That does not mean that you gained fat. Again, it is just your body responding to these changes in both how much you're eating, the energy stores your body has, as well as just like physical amount of food. We weigh a little bit more in a deficit, and we weigh a little bit more at maintenance because we're physically eating a little bit more food, even though we're just eating enough to maintain our body weight. So hopefully that makes sense. If that doesn't, you are welcome to send me an email. We can discuss it further. I know this is something that can be very confusing, but that is important to know if you are weighing yourself and if you are attached to the scale. So those are really my main talking points today for what to expect if you're going to use the scale while being in a caloric deficit or while pursuing body recomposition, where you're eating close to maintenance, maybe in a small deficit while lifting weights. If you have not already joined my list, please do for more helpful content. You can also subscribe to my YouTube channel where I put out videos like this and strength training videos. And I do have an entire 2-hour masterclass with a workbook further explaining how to pursue weight loss in a sustainable way. And if you want 50% off, I've got all the info for signing up and joining all those things. Those links are in the description. So thanks for being here, and I will catch you in another video.